It's been 14 years since Capcom released Resident Evil 5. Some people liked it, a few loved it, the majority of people did not care for it. It was a complete 180 from the direction of the previous games and was accused of being all-out action, no real horror, and just a focused mess. But I believe it's actually one of the best of the series. Allow me to explain. Now, Resident Evil 5 was built to play with a friend, making the game super teamwork focused. You and your friend need to plan together, share items, and help each other beat the tough parts and enemies. That's cool and all. But because you can play together, whether you're sitting on the same couch or online far apart, is what really made RE5 stand out in my opinion. And I absolutely love this feature. You remember the old Resident Evil 0 with its tag team zapping system? Well, I found that to be an absolute headache. But RE5, they absolutely nailed the co-op play. It was straightforward to team up with another player or with the game's AI when you're playing solo, and it was way less of a hassle than dealing with Ashley in RE4. Now, I get that mixing co-op play with RE might seem odd at first.
Why would you play games with me?
And yeah, Resident Evil 6 didn't really hit the mark for many, including me, but for Resident Evil 5, the co-op gameplay really works well and adds to the fun, making it a standout in the series for playing together. But I personally feel it's one of the best co-op systems to date. Yes, even to this day, and this game came out 14 odd years ago. It was simple, easy to control the AI when you weren't playing with a human, and well, it wasn't as annoying as Ashley in the original Resident Evil 4. Now, I do get it, co-op gameplay and Resident Evil just don't go together. I mean, Resident Evil 6 was the worst in the series yet, in my opinion, but I do personally feel RE5 is actually holding up to this day. Now, when Resident Evil 5 came out, it really pushed the limits of how good video games could look. RE4 had some pretty neat graphics, but we know exactly how Capcom tend to deliver when it comes to sequels and the graphics. The game takes you through all sorts of places, like bright African villages and creepy labs, all packed with details that make the world seem alive. The main characters, Chris Redfield and Sheva Alomar, along with all the different monsters and bad guys, looked really incredible and making you feel like you're even more part of the action. You even had Perv's bloody mod her character and perk up some of her credentials. Christ. Now, I find the graphics pretty good that I even made a video about Chris's triceps.
Impressive. Very nice.
Yes, his muscles. It's true, and it's not what you're thinking. The improvement in graphics from RE4 to RE5 was huge. It was like night and day. Now, seeing everything so much clearer and more detailed was a real treat, and it made playing RE5 a much more fantastic experience. The game didn't just look good, it just made the whole adventure more engaging because everything felt more intense and immersive. But I do personally feel this was overshadowed by the fans' response to the all-out action gameplay and the lack of a real horror element. The action-packed gameplay, yes, this is the big one, the one that rubbed people the wrong way. Now, you see, RE5 took the successful formula established by its predecessor and enhanced it to offer an even more action-focused gameplay experience. Now, the game adopted an over-the-shoulder camera perspective that allowed players control and precision when aiming and navigating through its environment. So it was a lot more controlled than RE4, which I personally quite liked. The approach made this combat more immersive and interactive, as players could easily align their shots and move their character with a heightened sense of accuracy. Although I think where RE6 really took it a notch up was when you could shoot, aim and move at the same time. I found that quite cool. Now, in addition to refine the shooting mechanics, RE5 introduced a broader selection of combat techniques, including close range attacks and quick time events that require timely button pressing in certain situations. Now, these new combat options provided players with a variety of ways to engage with enemies, and it made each encounter more unique, except when you're fighting those bloody villagers. That was probably the worst when it came to kind of close combat. Now, the expansion of the combat possibilities transformed the gameplay into a more dynamic and action-packed adventure. Now, this shift meant that players were often in the middle of intense battles, requiring quick thinking and fast reactions to survive. While this move towards a more action-oriented style was departure from the series' roots in survival horror, it did succeed in delivering a more exhilarating and satisfying gaming experience, in my opinion. But as I did say, this evolution also meant that the game focused less on elements of fear and survival that defined the earlier titles in the series. The emphasis on action over atmosphere led to a different kind of tension, so it was more driven by thrill of combat rather than by suspense of horror. But despite this change, RE5 managed to captivate players, me included, with its engaging gameplay, settings, and compelling storyline that pushed the boundaries of the franchise in new directions. So RE5, in summary, not only improved upon the action gameplay in the previous game, but it was also expanded significantly by offering players a more refined control system, array of combat actions, and fast-paced gameplay. However, it did so by dialing back the survivor horror element. RE5 took players to a new and unexplored setting. So this is the part that I was a little bit skeptical about. A fictional region in Africa where the game explored themes of bioterrorism and genetic experiments. Now, admittedly, the story in my opinion, the story was a little weak. Okay, there was no real hidden agenda that surprised players out of the blue. It was all quite predictable in my opinion. But the story itself did provide a fresh narrative perspective, I guess. So it did connect the storyline to the origins of the progenitor virus and the birth of the Umbrella Corporation. And the game delved into Chris's personal vendetta against Wesker, adding layers to his character and expanding on the series. Now, the African setting also introduced a unique cultural and environmental elements in the gameplay, such as navigating through shanty towns or exploring ancient ruins, which diversify the game's atmosphere and challenges. Look, I know it came out 14 years ago, but maybe some of you haven't played it, so I won't go too much into the storyline. But I do feel parts of the game were quite predictable, and the game did try to make up for the lack of this by just going with the all-out action and hoping players wouldn't notice. Newsflash, Capcom, the Resident Evil storyline is one of the most fascinating ones, so I do think you missed a trick with this one. In Resident Evil, players had a wide range of weapons and gadgets to choose from, with each having their own little special feature which made them stronger. Now, Resident Evil 4 introduced this and I thought it was really cool, but Resident Evil 5 made it a lot better. So it meant players could set up their gear in a way that matched how they like to play. For example, if someone enjoyed fighting enemies from a distance, you could pack a sniper rifle. Or if it was up close, grab a shotgun. Now, the game system for carrying items, again, borrowed heavily from the previous one, which is quite good. So it was seen in Resident Evil 4 and did add some more strategy to the game. But it wasn't like the briefcase, which I found quite fun actually, so you had to play a game of Tetris with it. Players had to plan ahead and decide which items were most important for the mission. And I did love how easy you can use the D-pad to assign weapons and switch seamlessly between each item that you've got, which is pretty cool. Now, one of the cool things about RE5 was a friend with the ability to swap items with them. This feature made working together and sharing resources a big part of the game. It meant that players had to communicate and help each other by sharing ammo, healing items, or other useful gadgets. Now, this sharing and trading part of the cooperative gameplay made it even more fun, as it did require players to think together and make joint decisions on how to best use their shared inventory. Now, I've never done that in a game previously, so I did find this quite exciting actually. Enemy design. Now, the game introduced a diverse array of enemies, of the names of which I really cannot pronounce, but you had these infected Majini, I don't know if it's a silent J, villagers, to the terrifying BOWs like the Lickers and the big giant dudes. I'll put their name on the screen. Desu. Don't know if it's a silent N. Sorry, I totally forgot the names of them, so I had to Google them. Now, each enemy type presented unique challenges, requiring players to adapt their strategies and exploit weaknesses. I personally found the villagers to be the biggest effing bleeping annoyances, as killing them wasn't straightforward, as they would perform attacks on you that weren't really easy to predict. But the Lickers were pretty fun and difficult to fight. We all know Lickers from the previous ones. And what else did we have? You had those big giants making a comeback and just good old-fashioned zombies, but I don't know whether they're zombies. Yeah, they seem to be pretty focused and have a sense of awareness this time round. Now, the bosses in particular were quite bearable for their scale, design, and the complex battle mechanics required to defeat them. This variety in enemy design kept encounters fresh and engaging throughout the game, providing players with a constant stream of challenges. So it wasn't kind of just the same type of enemies. Depending on where you were in the map, the zombies, I guess, changed up a little bit. So I personally enjoyed them all. They all pose something different, except for that damn Albert Wesker fight. I mean, what the hell happened here? You had Chris Redfield punching boulders.
Hell no, man. What the
The Mercenaries mode. Now, Resident Evil shined in this part of the game. This was like a mini game for anyone that hasn't played it that was all about action and fun. and it was different from the main story of the game. In this mode, players could pick from different characters, each one having their own special guns and skills. The main goal was to defeat as many enemies as possible before the time ran out. This mode was all about moving fast and playing smart. That's all. It encouraged players to be quick, aiming for combo skills, which means defeating enemies in a row without stopping. That was probably my most favourite part. The way of playing was not just exciting, but also made players think about the best way to use their bullets and health items so they wouldn't run out. Now, what made the Mercenaries mode so appealing was how it turned the game into a more competitive and thrilling experience. I actually found when I completed the storyline, I spent a chunk of time in the Mercenaries, and I didn't actually replay the game again after a good number of days. You know, players could keep trying to beat their own scores or compete with friends and players from around the world. There was this challenge of getting a higher score that made the game mode so addictive, and it made it fun to come back to. That's exactly what I wanted to do, and I did. And to be honest, to this day, I still do play it from time to time on the PlayStation 5. Now, the mode was also a great way for players to practice and get much better at the game. Since it focused on the action parts of RE5, playing the Mercenaries could help players improve their shooting and dodging skills as well. So another cool thing about the Mercenaries mod was the variety it offered. So with different characters to choose from, and each one having their own set of weapons and abilities, players could find new strategies and ways to play each time they started a new round. I found myself personally going for Excella with the shoot in the knee and then inject her with some sort of potent virus in the back. It was a one-hit kill, or Sheva with her bow and arrow. Absolutely loved that, the one-hit kill one. But overall, the Mercenaries mode added a lot of extra fun to Resident Evil 5. I think, personally, if this was not included in the game and it wasn't as good as it was, I don't know if the game would be such a huge hit. I do think it saved it from people who were complaining about the horror elements, and it gave players a break from the story with something that was just pure action and fun. Not as if we had enough of that in the main storyline, I guess. This mode was a big reason why many people loved the game, as I said, and it kept playing. And people kept playing it long after they finished the main story. And I guess it was a part of what made RE5 memorable and enjoyable for so many players. Now, after Resident Evil 5 came out, it got a lot of praise for the extra content it added later on. And I must admit, I absolutely loved it, especially for the two special packs called Lost in Nightmares and Desperate Escape. These extra parts of the game gave players new stories to explore and more chances to play together with friends. Lost in Nightmares took place back in these kind of spooky part of Resident Evil, I guess, that many fans missed. So especially for people who are playing it now, it kind of, I guess, puts it together so you kind of get a feel for the storyline. It told a part of the story that wasn't covered in the main game, filling in some of the blanks and adding more to the overall plot. It was like going on a new adventure that felt both familiar and exciting at the same time, with puzzles to solve and scary moments that made players jump. Desperate Escape was all about action and working together. It showed what happened to some of the characters right after the main story ended. So the DLC was fast-paced and filled with enemies to fight, making teamwork even more important. And it was a challenge that tested players' skills and strategies, especially when you play with a friend. Both of these DLCs were loved because they brought back some of that horror vibe that Resident Evil is known for. I found it a little bit more scarier, which is quite good. And it still kept the action and excitement high, I guess. They made the game even better by adding more stories and chances to play cooperatively. And I think if it was just a single-player mode, probably would have sucked. So I do like the fact that they made it co-op again. Now, overall, Resident Evil 5 has a lot going for it. Is it still playable today? Does it hold up? Yes, in my opinion, absolutely. The way it lets players join forces and tackle challenges together was something new and exciting. The game looks amazing too, with graphics and details that really make the world come alive. The action is thrilling. I guess some people weren't a fan of it, but it kept players on the edge of their seats as they fight through hordes of enemies, and the story is deep and engaging at times. Now, adding in extra content with the DLC just made it even more appealing in my eyes. It showed that the game could both stick to its roots with scary, horror-filled moments and also offer the fast-paced action that the new fans, I guess, they loved. Now, this mix, along with the great co-op play and beautiful visuals, is what makes the Resident Evil 5 stand out, and it's why it's remembered quite fondly. And again, the reason why I remembered it was through a combination of all of that. It's a game that brought something new to the series, and then obviously Resident Evil just took a dump right over it, and just, yeah, they really took the mick there. So there you have it. I personally feel, despite the story and action-packed gameplay, this was an entry that was a pretty strong one. But look, that's what makes gaming culture diverse, right? We have games that some people love, but others don't. Now let's move away from horror or action and go to something a bit more exciting, Grand Theft Auto 6. I made a video about features that must be included in the game, so do me a favor and consider subscribing first, and then go on over and watch that video, and I'll see you there.